Hello, welcome to Fat Larry's Customs, and this is our How-To Friday. Today, we're going to fill a hole in the middle of a seat. This is a split back bench seat, and the pivots in the center of the seat go right here in the middle. And to be honest, I'm doing this video because I didn't know how to do it. I was struggling on how I wanted to do this, and it was kind of making me mad, so I sat down and watched a few videos and talked to a few people and found a good way to do it. So I'm going to show you the easy way to do these, because otherwise you'll get really frustrated. It gets really complicated, and it's not hard. So what I've done is I've got a few pieces of the leather that are just bigger than the hole that I'm trying to cover. So I got two pieces, and I put them face to face. Now what I'm going to do now is I need to make a pattern for my hole. So I'm going to put my leather and center that on there underneath my hole, and I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to trace out where I want that hole to be. Now we're going to pull that out, and there it is. Now one of the things that I want to do on here is, because this hole is not perfectly square. It's close, but it's not perfectly square. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mark on this side so that I know that that end goes this way. A lot of times I will actually mark my leather too, so I know that that's where that mark goes. So when I put it back in, if it's just a little bit off square or it's an odd shape, you're going to know exactly where that is. Okay, so now that I've got it marked and I got it laid out, we're going to go over to the sewing machine here and we're going to sew it up. All right, so we only need just about 1/4 of an inch around the edge here. So, but we want to make sure that those overlap just right. So what I'm going to do is, since I want to start this right on the corner, I keep my presser foot up and I put that needle right in that corner where I want it to go, and that's where I'm going to start. Okay. And you want to go right to the outside edge. Now if you're curious, just lift your presser foot up and you can see that that's sitting right on the edge of that mark. Now you want the needle down at this point. You can take it and you can turn it so that you can sew the next side. Make sure you keep that flat. If it bunches up on the bottom or something, you're going to have to start all over again. Okay, right there. Now I'm okay going just a little bit past, because we're going to end up with a little bit of a lip on the inside, and that's okay. And we'll do that again. And check that, and we're right there on the edge. So we'll get our last seam here. And I want to back stitch that to lock in that stitch. All right, now I'm sure somebody's going to go, he didn't back stitch when he started. And you're right, I didn't back stitch when I started. And before I cut that, so I know which one's which, I'll take this here and I'll just give that a little pull. And you see how that piece from the front side came up there. And I'll just take that and pull that out. Now this is also why I like to leave several inches hanging out from under my foot when I start, because now I've got these pieces here. Now if they're short, they're really hard to tie. So since I didn't do a back stitch there, we're just going to tie that up, and I'm just going to do that 2 or 3 times. And I know people who put glue on them and stuff like that. I've never had one come apart. but I put 3 loops on it. And there we go. Okay, so you can see we've got our square all cut, all sewn up. All right, let's go cut it out. All right, now we're gonna cut out this thing. Now, don't cut your seams, because if you cut your seams and you cut that too close, you do like we did the very first time, you're gonna end up cutting your thread, and you're gonna have to do it all over again. So you wanna leave about an 1/8 to a 1/16 of an inch right there. And I just take a razor blade and I come right to the edge, and I just push it down right through where it's at. And you can just come along and just slowly push until you get right to the edge. And it usually takes you once or twice to get through there. And then just rotate it and start all over again at the next side. And notice I'm just pushing it down. So when I push it down, that will just cut right through the leather. And right here we've got two pieces of leather, and so it'll cut right through them. And you'll see here. And then after I do that, I'll just pull that through there and start on the next side. This is also one of the reasons I don't throw away any of my leather scraps, except for the little teeny ones. Try not to put my shadow right over the top of that so you can see it. The corners sometimes will hang up, so you just take your knife, your razor blade, and just give a little nick right there on the corner. Okay, and you get to this side here, notice that our line is all the way around, so you can see where it came to. And you probably have to just do just a little touch up on the corners. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna turn this inside out. So just take one side and just push it through. Okay, now there's still a little bit of a edge there, and you're tempted to cut that back, but be careful if you do, because if you cut it too much, like I showed you before, you're going to end up cutting that thread. And I would leave about an 1/8 to a 1/16 of an inch around there, and you'll see why. So once we get that close, what I like to do is I'll set my seam up the way I want it to lay. Then I'll take my hammer and work that so that seam is right in the middle. Just be patient, because you want that seam in there to lay right in the middle of that. Okay, so let's go on to the next piece here. Now notice all these puckers and stuff in the corner. If you give them a tug and you just work them, they'll go flat. But just be patient and work it. And all these pieces will continue to just come together. And look at both sides when you're doing it to make sure both sides, you notice how that pucker was there. And just work that until that lays nice and flat. Now this side, since it's short, it's having a little tougher time. I normally would have left that another inch or so longer, See how this side, it just has enough weight on it. Okay, so we've got it all laid out now. Okay, so the next step is to put it in our hole. Remember, we put our line here and we put our line here, so we know that this is the orientation of this. Now, it doesn't matter which side's up or down, but I like to look at it, and typically one side will look just a little bit better than the other. And so I think this side looks better, so I'm going to use this side. And you can push it from the top, you can push it from the bottom, it doesn't really matter. And make sure that you pull out all the way around. Now I'm gonna tell you something. When I did this one here, I made a mistake, and you can see a little pucker right there that shouldn't have been there. If I would have taken that bottom side and looked just a little closer. So this time we're not gonna let that happen. And so once we've got that in there, once again, we're going to take our hammer and just work that so that it lays flat in there. Now these holes are going to be hidden because they're under the seat, but one of the reasons I'm doing this is to add strength to this, so that because it moves, I don't want this to tear out. So we're adding rigidity and strength to this section of the seat. I could have just left the holes there and they would have been fine, but I was afraid that they would have torn over time. Okay, so there we go. And we can look at the back side and see the back side that it's light and flat. That was my problem on the other. That's why I got a little extra piece of thing, because it was folded over, and I didn't notice that it was folded over because I couldn't see it from the top. So look at your backside before you start sewing it. All right, one thing I forgot to do on the table, I'm going to do it right now, is you got to be careful, because if you sew too close to the edge, you'll miss and you won't sew it to the top. And so what I like to do is mark it. So I take my ruler, because I want a straight line, and I can stretch my leather out the way I want it to lay, and make sure that I'm just touching that. And I'll just put some marks in here where I want those to go. And got that side. And if I do it here where I can see and I can feel that, and if it's not quite enough, you can just back it off a little bit. And then we'll do this side here. But I like to give that a quarter an inch or so. I want it to have enough backing that it's not going to tear out. It's not going to be a problem for me later on. Okay, now you can see where I've got all my markings. And we're going to sew this thing up. Now notice, you can't see it, but this piece of the leather, since it's so small, so short, keeps pulling away. So when I get it in here, I want to make sure that lays flat. Otherwise, I'll get a stitch on the top side and I won't get a stitch on the bottom side. Okay, so then I stretch that side and make sure that's tucked under there. And I drop my needle right where I want to start. And I also want to make sure that I lock that stitch in. Okay, when I stop, I want to make sure that thing is down. Okay, because the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot this thing around just like I did before. You lift that foot up, rotate that thing around, and Okay. And then I'm going to do it again. Now this is where I got the most of my fabric. So we're gonna rotate that around. Notice when you got lots of fabric, if you just roll it up so that you can control it. You kind of got to learn to do that when you're doing big projects. Okay, I'm going to stretch that out. And a little harder to keep it going straight when you're trying to control so much stuff. Now I try and get right on, and sometimes the needle will go right on the line or before, but I typically go after. In these cases, I'm all right because you can if you go short, sometimes you don't have enough thread. And so, as you can see, this makes it really fun to do on these big seats. All right, so my last stitch here, I want to make sure that thing is laid out there good and everything underneath it's laid out there good. So we're gonna finish this stitch up. And if your stuff is in the way, it's not gonna want to move, so. Okay, there we go. Now, I want to release that thread. So, you just got to kind of figure out the easiest way to get that thing out. There we go, and notice we got both of our threads still there, which means we did just what we're supposed to do. Don't get in a hurry, don't try and force it, otherwise you'll break your threads and you'll cause problems for the next time you go to stitch this. But as you can see, everything looks good. Our lines look straight. Our hole's really close. And we flip it over. You can see why I'm having a problem with that hole, because I didn't have enough leather back here. This piece needed to be another inch, but that'll be okay. All right, let's go over to the table and finish this thing up. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get rid of all of our strings. And now we're gonna get rid of our excess leather. So what you wanna do with this is just pull that up, and you wanna leave about 1/8 of an inch around here. You gotta be really careful. Don't cut your thread. Along there. Try and make that as level and even as you can, which can be a trick at times. And let's see if we can get this last one. And since this is short, like I say, it makes it harder if it's short. So if you can make sure you got enough leather around that. There's just a piece of scrap that I grabbed, and there you go. And I always like to give it a little tap, see if I can get everything to lay flat at the end. And then we'll clean this up. We're using a little Cosmoline. You can pick this up from Keystone. And just wipe those down, and all those marks will go away. There you go. Okay, that's what it looks like. I haven't had any reactions on leather. Phil Cato is the one who showed me this stuff, and I had glue all over my hands, and I dumped some on my hands, and it just came right off. And I asked him why he'd been hiding this from me all these years. So it's a good product, and it works real slick. So there you have it. We've got our holes all surrounded and protected so they're not going to tear out. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Fat Larry's Customs. Let us know how you like this video. Share any tips or tricks that you might have to add to this. We're always looking for great ways to do things. I find a lot of things from other people on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram as well. And I thank them for their help, because nobody knows everything. We all know it a little bit, and together we'll learn a lot. So follow us, share us, like us, and keep in touch. This is Fat Larry saying have a great weekend.